The Great Dragon Selection Day had finally arrived on the planet Archon Prime. Warriors, pilots, and commanders from many species stood proudly inside the huge silver arena. One by one, powerful dragons walked toward their new partners. Some dragons were covered in golden scales, while others had giant wings and glowing eyes. Every time a strong dragon appeared, the crowd cheered loudly from the seats above. Among all the participants stood a human mechanic named Ethan Carter. Humans were still new to the Galactic Alliance, and many species believed they were weak and ordinary. Ethan was not a soldier or a famous pilot. He repaired engines, ships, and machines. Because of this, many aliens laughed when they saw his name on the selection list. The final name was called through the speakers. Ethan Carter, human representative. The arena became strangely quiet. Some aliens smiled while others whispered to each other. Everyone wanted to see what kind of dragon would be given to the human. Ethan slowly walked to the center of the arena and waited patiently. A large metal gate opened at the far end of the arena. But instead of hearing the heavy steps of a mighty dragon, the crowd heard something else. Slow footsteps echoed across the floor. Then a small, white dragon appeared from the shadows. One of her wings dragged across the ground and her left leg moved with difficulty. The crowd exploded with laughter. Some people pointed toward the dragon while others shook their heads. The dragon's scales were pure white, almost shining under the arena lights. Her red eyes stayed low as if she had already accepted her fate. She looked tired, lonely, and completely defeated. "That is the Crippled Albino," one officer said with a smile. "Nobody wanted her for 10 years. Another officer laughed and added, "Maybe she is perfect for a human mechanic." The nearby commanders joined the laughter. To them, this was not a dragon selection. It was a public insult. Ethan looked at the dragon carefully. He noticed the damaged wing and the scars near her shoulder, but he also noticed something that nobody else seemed to see. Deep inside her eyes was anger, not anger toward him, but anger toward the world that had abandoned her. The dragon refused to look at the crowd. She kept her eyes on the floor while the insults continued around her. Ethan slowly walked closer until he stood only a few steps away. The guards watched carefully, expecting the dragon to grow violent or afraid. Instead, something unexpected happened. The dragon slowly raised her head and looked directly at the human. For a few seconds, neither of them moved. The entire arena became silent. Ethan could see intelligence in her eyes. He could also see pain, disappointment, and years of loneliness. Ethan knelt beside her injured wing and examined the damage. The bones had healed in a strange position, almost as if someone had ignored the injury for years. This was not normal. Even basic medical care could have helped her long ago. Someone had chosen not to help her. He gently touched the broken wing support. "You are not broken," Ethan said quietly. The dragon stared at him without moving. The crowd could not hear his words, but the dragon heard every single one of them. For the first time in many years, her eyes changed. The sadness inside them became something else. Hope. One of the officers stepped forward with a smile. "Human, you can refuse the dragon and leave with your dignity." The crowd laughed once again. Everyone expected Ethan to walk away from the useless creature standing beside him. Instead, Ethan stood up and faced the officials. "I will take her," he said calmly. The arena became silent once more. "You are making a mistake," another commander warned him. Ethan shook his head. "No, I think all of you already made that mistake years ago." The albino dragon slowly moved closer to him. For the first time since entering the arena, she stood proudly instead of hiding herself from the crowd. Ethan placed his hand gently on her neck while thousands of shocked eyes watched from above. As they prepared to leave the arena, Ethan noticed something strange near the damaged wing. Hidden beneath the old scars was a small burn mark. It was not caused by an accident. It looked more like the mark from a weapon. Ethan stopped walking. Someone had not failed this dragon. Someone had crippled her on purpose. Ethan and the albino dragon left the arena while thousands of eyes followed them. The same crowd that had laughed only minutes earlier was now whispering among themselves. Ethan could not stop thinking about the strange burn mark near her wing. It looked too clean to be an accident. Years of working with machines had taught him how to recognize damage. This injury felt different. The dragon shelter was located far from the main academy buildings. Most dragons lived in large open fields near the mountains, but the albino dragon was kept alone in an old metal hangar. The doors were rusty, and the lights inside barely worked. It looked more like a prison than a home. Ethan slowly looked around the room and understood why she had lost hope. The white dragon quietly walked to a corner and lay down on the cold floor. She did not expect kindness from anyone anymore. Ethan opened his repair kit and carefully examined her damaged wing. The bones had healed in the wrong position many years ago. Someone had ignored the injury for far too long. No medical team could have missed something so serious. As he continued his inspection, Ethan found another surprise. Small marks covered the metal support near her shoulder joint. They looked exactly like damage caused by military energy weapons. Ethan frowned as he looked closer. Dragons did not train with weapons near their wings. Someone had attacked her when she was young. The next morning, Ethan visited the Academy Record Center. After hours of searching, he finally found her file hidden inside an old archive. Most of the information had been removed or deleted. Only one sentence remained visible on the screen. It read, "Subject unsuitable for service. Training accident during early development." Ethan stared at the words for several seconds. The report felt wrong. A training accident could not explain the weapon marks he had found. He searched for more information, but every file connected to the dragon had disappeared. Someone had erased her history completely. That only made Ethan more determined to learn the truth. For the next few days, Ethan worked inside the hangar from sunrise until late at night. He designed light support frames for her damaged wing using spare ship materials. The work was slow and difficult. Sometimes the dragon watched him quietly from across the room. Other times she closed her eyes as if she expected another failure. Finally, the day came for her first test. Ethan carefully attached the support frame to her injured wing. The dragon stood up and looked toward the open field outside the hangar. She took a deep breath and began to run. For a moment, hope appeared in her eyes once again. She jumped into the air. For 2 seconds, she stayed above the ground. Then the support frame broke apart, and she crashed hard into the dirt below. The dragon remained motionless as the nearby cadets laughed from a distance. Ethan quickly ran toward her, expecting anger or fear. Instead, the white dragon slowly tried to stand again. Her legs shook, but she refused to stay down. Ethan smiled as he watched her. Most dragons gave up after pain. She did not. That night, while Ethan repaired the broken frame, the dragon suddenly placed her head beside him. It was the first time she'd ever approached someone on her own. Ethan gently touched her neck scales and continued working in silence. Neither of them noticed the shadow standing outside the hangar doors. Someone was watching them, and that person did not want the albino dragon to fly again. The next morning, Ethan woke up before sunrise and returned to the old hangar. He expected to find the albino dragon sleeping in the corner as usual. Instead, he found her standing near the open doors, looking toward the mountains in the distance. For the first time, her eyes did not look empty. They looked curious. Ethan smiled quietly and walked toward her with the new wing support in his hands. This time, the support frame was stronger and lighter than before. Ethan had used parts from damaged scout ships and flight stabilizers from old drones. It had taken him the entire night to finish the design. He carefully attached the new frame to her injured wing and checked every connection twice. The dragon remained calm during the process, almost as if she trusted him completely now. They walked together toward the empty training field behind the academy. A few cadets noticed them and stopped to watch from a distance. Soon, more students gathered near the fence. Some were curious, while others came only to laugh again. Ethan ignored them and focused only on the dragon standing beside him. Today was not about proving anything to the crowd. The white dragon slowly moved toward the center of the field. She looked back at Ethan for a brief moment before lowering her body. Then she started running across the grass as fast as she could. Her wings opened wide against the morning wind. A second later, she jumped into the air once again. This time she stayed in the air longer. 1 second became 3. 3 seconds became 5. The crowd slowly stopped laughing. The dragon climbed higher before suddenly losing balance and crashing back to the ground. Ethan immediately ran toward her, fearing the worst. Dust covered the field as he reached her side. But before he could say anything, the dragon stood up by herself. She was hurt, but her eyes burned with determination. From that day forward, the training never stopped. Every morning before sunrise, Ethan repaired and improved the wing supports. Every afternoon, the albino dragon tried again. Sometimes she stayed in the air for only a few seconds. Sometimes she failed before even leaving the ground, but she never stopped trying. Days passed, and the whispers around the academy began to change. The same students who once laughed now watched from the sidelines in silence. Some even started placing bets on how long she could stay airborne. Ethan ignored all of it. For him, this was never about proving others wrong. It was about giving her the chance she deserved. One evening, dark clouds gathered above the academy without warning. A powerful storm moved across the mountains, bringing heavy winds and thunder. The instructors ordered everyone back inside immediately. Ethan was preparing to leave when he noticed something strange. The albino dragon was staring directly at the sky. Before he could stop her, she ran toward the cliffs near the training field. She jumped. The wind caught her wings. Instead of falling, she rose higher and higher into the storm clouds above. Lightning flashed across the sky as the white dragon disappeared into the darkness. Ethan stood frozen as rain began to fall around him. Seconds felt like hours while he searched the clouds above. Then suddenly a loud roar echoed across the valley. A massive white shape burst through the storm clouds. The albino dragon was flying, not falling, not gliding, flying. But as Ethan smiled with relief, he noticed something that made his heart stop. Far above the academy, 3 black warships had appeared from hyperspace, and they were heading directly toward the planet. Warning alarms echoed across the academy as the 3 black warships entered the planet's atmosphere. Students and instructors rushed toward emergency shelters while defense teams prepared for battle. Large cannons rose from the ground around the academy walls. Ethan looked toward the sky with worry as the white dragon circled above the storm clouds. She had only learned to fly, and now a war had arrived at their door. Within minutes, enemy fighters poured out from the warships like a swarm of insects. The Academy's dragons and riders quickly took to the sky to defend the planet. Fire and energy blasts filled the dark clouds above the mountains. Explosions lit up the night as dragons clashed with enemy ships. Ethan watched helplessly from below, knowing he had no way to join the fight. Suddenly, one of the enemy fighters broke through the defenses and headed directly toward the Academy hangars. Panic spread among the cadets as the ship opened fire on the buildings below. Ethan grabbed his tools and pulled several students toward safety. The enemy ship prepared for another attack run. There was no time left for anyone to escape. Then a loud roar shook the valley. The white dragon burst through the storm clouds like a bolt of lightning. Her shining scales reflected the flashes of thunder around her. She flew directly toward the enemy fighter with incredible speed. Before anyone could react, she slammed into the ship and sent it crashing into the nearby hills. The entire battlefield fell silent for a moment. The enemy commander watched the scene from his warship bridge. His face lost all color as he looked at the white dragon on his screen. He immediately stood up from his command chair and moved closer to the display. The officers around him exchanged nervous looks. They had never seen their commander afraid before. "It cannot be her," the commander whispered quietly. He ordered every screen in the ship to zoom closer on the dragon. The glowing white scales, the red eyes, and the silver markings along her wings matched the ancient records perfectly. The bridge crew stared in complete disbelief. According to history, her bloodline had disappeared centuries ago. The last of the Sky Royals were believed to be extinct. Back at the Academy, the white dragon continued fighting beside the defending forces. Enemy fighters that had attacked without fear suddenly changed direction and avoided her completely. Even larger enemy ships stayed far away from her flight path. It was as if they recognized something the Academy did not. Ethan could see the confusion spreading among the defenders. During the battle, the dragon flew beside Ethan and lowered herself near the ground. For the first time, she invited him onto her back. Ethan hesitated for only a second before climbing onto the flight harness he had built himself. The white dragon spread her wings wide against the storm winds. Together they rose into the sky. The moment they entered the battle, everything changed. Ethan guided her movements while she attacked enemy ships with perfect precision. His engineering mind quickly noticed weak points in the enemy formations. The dragon moved exactly where he directed her. One by one, enemy fighters began falling from the sky. The defenders could hardly believe what they were seeing. The same people who had laughed at them days earlier now watched in complete silence. The human mechanic and the crippled albino dragon were leading the defense of the entire academy. Their teamwork looked effortless, almost natural. For the first time in years, hope returned to the battlefield. The impossible was happening right before their eyes. Then the enemy commander opened a direct communication channel to every ship in orbit. His voice echoed across the battlefield. Retreat immediately. No one is to attack the White Queen. Ethan froze as he heard those words. The White Queen? The dragon looked back at him for a brief moment. It seemed she already knew that name. The battlefield became silent after the enemy commander ordered the retreat. Hundreds of soldiers and dragon riders looked toward the white dragon flying beside Ethan. Nobody understood why an entire invasion force feared a dragon that had been called useless only days earlier. Even the academy leaders stood speechless as the enemy ship slowly moved away from the planet. The storm above the valley finally began to calm. Ethan guided the white dragon back to the ground near the academy gates. The moment she landed, dozens of officers rushed toward them with questions. Before anyone could speak, the oldest dragon historian in the academy stepped forward. His eyes widened as he looked at the silver markings on her wings. He knew exactly what he was seeing. The White Queen has returned, he whispered. The crowd looked at each other in confusion. The historian explained that centuries ago the Sky Royals protected entire star systems from war and destruction. They were the strongest and wisest dragons in galactic history. But during a great conflict, the entire bloodline disappeared without a trace. Everyone believed the last White Queen had died long ago. The historian slowly turned toward Ethan and the dragon. He explained that many powerful families feared the return of the royal bloodline. If a White Queen survived, she could unite dragons across the galaxy once again. Suddenly, Ethan remembered the weapon marks he had found near her wing. The truth finally became clear. Someone had attacked her as a child. Someone wanted the White Queen to disappear forever. The dragon lowered her head as if she understood every word. For years, she had lived alone, forgotten and rejected by everyone around her. She had been called weak, broken, and useless since childhood. But despite everything, she had never given up. Ethan looked at her and smiled quietly. Neither of them had given up. In the following weeks, news of the battle spread across the galaxy. Every major world talked about the human mechanic and the albino dragon who saved an entire academy. Reporters, commanders, and politicians arrived from distant systems to meet them. The same officers who had laughed during the selection ceremony now stood in line to apologize. History had changed faster than anyone expected. The white dragon continued training every day with Ethan by her side. Together, they improved her flight systems and rebuilt her strength. Soon she was flying higher and faster than any dragon in the academy. Her white wings became a symbol of hope across the Galactic Alliance. Children on distant planets began calling her the Queen of the Skies. One evening, Ethan and the dragon stood together on top of the academy cliffs. The sun slowly disappeared behind the mountains while stars filled the sky above them. The dragon looked toward the horizon and released a calm, powerful roar. It echoed across the valley for miles. Ethan looked up at her and smiled. A few weeks earlier, she had been abandoned inside a dark hangar. Now she ruled the skies. The galaxy learned an important lesson that day. Never insult a human by giving him something broken, because humans have a strange habit of fixing the things everyone else gives up on. And sometimes, those broken things become legends.